Welcome to the Future of Sustainability, brought to you by California Software Professional Association, a 501c3 nonprofit. This is a part of our Future of Everything speaking series that has been going and growing for 5 years. I could not be more proud of this panel tonight. It takes a community effort to host a community event. I have been hosting entrepreneur events since 2013. It didn't get any easier. I did get a little bit better because I have more friends to lean in now. Where is AI when we needed all the help? If you are an organizer of anything, let me tell you, your job is safe from AI. Let's give a huge shout out to our generous sponsor, the Multiverse, for hosting us and for feeding us. Farad is the managing partner at La Marca, the parent company of the Multiverse. Farad, will you be able to tell us a little bit about the Multiverse and your vision for the future?
Thank you so much. Happy to have all of you guys here. We have an amazing panel, very amazing topic. The Multiverse, by code, is basically a global investment in innovation entrepreneurship platform. We actually have VIP guests today that's coming from Saudi Arabia to visit us. We actually have a couple of people from Code 2, the main sponsor behind the Multiverse. Yeah. So the Multiverse, in a nutshell, we call it a multi-nodal, multi-model platform, meaning that we want to create these hubs in multiple ecosystems. So we have amazing ecosystem in Saudi, thriving, and then like this place here in Palo Alto at the heart of Silicon Valley, we're going to London, Berlin, Beijing, and Singapore, and we want to connect the world. Like it should be easy access for all of us to access global tech ecosystems. So this is kind of the ultimate vision. We have amazing people today. Even after the amazing panel discussion, I invite everyone to connect with people. We have also VIP leaders coming from Saudi. They're leading the innovation ecosystem. They are very passionate about helping and supporting and scaling companies and attracting companies as well. So very happy to have the Multiverse, as I hear this feedback from the people that this is one of the most vibrant hubs in Palo Alto and the Bay Area. So thank you for coming. Thank you for making this happen. And I will give it back to you, Nikki. Thank you, Nikki, as always. Has been an integral part of our community. She has been, so thank you for bringing this.
Thank you, Farad and the Multiverse for hosting us. What makes Silicon Valley a special place is not only its mindset, but its paying it forward culture. None of the speakers and organizers here are getting paid. We only get paid handsomely by your friendship. My lovely co-host, Kiara, she is an organizer for Silicon Valley Talks. Kiara, could you tell us a little bit about your organization and what brought you here from Peru?
So Silicon Valley Talk organize and host different events. We talk about different topics like blockchain, AI, real estate, and yeah, I come from Peru, so for me, I'm really excited actually about listening from the amazing speakers about sustainability. I grew up in the Amazon, in the jungle, so for me, it's just like the topic of my heart because we need to take care of our environment. And yeah, Silicon Valley Talk let me help people to connect and build a powerful network.
Introducing our moderator, Ron Erd. I am so fortunate to call Ron a dear friend and a trusted advisor. Ron is a 5-time CEO. His passion is to make our economy greener. Ron is a growth executive, an advisor and consultant. at unlocking growth.
Great. Thank you very much, Nikki, and Jason in the Multiverse, and Lamarca. This is a great facility that you have, and it's so wonderful that you open it up to the community so we can all get to know each other and share ideas to move the economy forward. We have a great panel tonight, and I want to find out, before I introduce the panel, if you could just, I know everyone here is interested in sustainability, otherwise you wouldn't be here, but if you could raise your hand if you're working in sustainability, just so the panel can get a sense of that. Awesome. Awesome, about a quarter of the audience. And I guess I'll let everybody raise their hand who's just interested in sustainability. Everyone else, well, not everyone else is raising their hand, but not everyone else is raising their hand. Today we have a wide-ranging discussion from some experts with very different backgrounds and very different perspectives. So what we're going to do is I'll introduce the panel. Each of the panelists will talk a little bit about what they're doing, and then we'll dive into a discussion around what's going on globally with sustainability. And we had talked a little bit before, and I learned that policy is important across this panel, so we'll talk a little bit about policy, and then we'll dive into some specifics so you guys can really hone in on what's going on now. Well, I guess Faramars is right here next to me, so I'll introduce him first. Faramars Magsulu is responsible for the development and growth of Qualcomm's business around IoT and 5G in the energy and utilities sector. He specializes in large-scale systems analysis and optimization, digitization of the energy value chain, and renewable energy integration, digitalization of the industrial infrastructure, Internet of Things, and edge computing. Faramars has a PhD from Case Western Reserve University. Welcome. Next we have Wade Bitteroff, who is the founder of Energy and Sustainability at Plug and Play. Wade was way before his time when sustainability became popular. He started this 7 years ago. Plug and Play is an active early stage investor and global corporate innovation center. Wade holds a master's degree in chemical engineering and petroleum and natural gas engineering. His mission at Plug and Play is to bring innovation into the energy industry by bridging large corporations to the startup ecosystems. In the past 3 years, Wade has worked closely with entrepreneurs that are building innovative products and solutions for the electric utilities and oil and gas companies. So aren't we glad that the oil and gas and traditional energy companies are focused on sustainability, and Wade is helping them. Last but certainly not least, we have Anatoly Korp, and Anatoly is a serial entrepreneur and founder of ChargeLink. Previously, he built a profitable energy transportation business in energy transportation at the age of 21, and started ChargeLink 4 years ago to create microgrids. ChargeLink is starting in the EV charging space with over 100 chargers installed that they manufacture themselves, and he expects that to grow to 300 by the end of the year, and he'd be launching a new product next year and already has $50 million in pre-order. So super excited to hear more about that. Wade, why don't you kick us off? I think you brought a few slides. You can kind of give hopefully give the audience a sense of all that Plug and Play is, well, not all that they're doing, but some high overview of what Plug and Play is doing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. And thank you, Nikki and Fuad, for having us here today. My name is Wade Bitteroff. I'm with Plug and Play. I heard a few folks have been to Plug and Play. I was with some of them last night myself. Maybe just a quick raise of hands. Who's hearing about Plug and Play for the first time today? Okay. For those of you who have seen Plug and Play or know about it, some of this stuff might be to some extent familiar to you already. So I'll start with a very high-level introduction of Plug and Play and what we do as an organization. And then hopefully we will dive down, if time allows, into some of our sustainability practices, some of our focus areas, and talk about some case studies and hopefully some of our portfolio companies that are tackling climate change. If the slide comes up, we use the slides. Otherwise,
I didn't have time to load up your slide. It's on my laptop.
take your time. So I'll just go ahead. Plug and play. We do two things at the core. Number one is we invest in early stage startups out of a private family office, deploying about $20 million a year into 200 startups every year. We usually take up to 5% equity in the companies that we invest in. We rarely lead around, and we don't take board seats in the companies that we invest in. So that's, broadly speaking, Plug and Play's investment approach. And our thesis is really, the bottom line of our thesis is the potential venture grade returns that we expect in the startups that we invest in. And then secondarily, we do a corporate consulting innovation practice with over 550 of the largest corporations across 20 different industries and 45 locations globally. We augment their external innovation strategy primarily by matchmaking them with the startups that can address their business challenges. A business that has grown over the past 6 years, we make about over $100 million on that front, and because the corporations join Plug and Play, or the governments join Plug and Play and become a financial sponsor, we don't charge the startups anything. So our services to startups are completely free and no equity required, and that enables us to attract some of the best companies out there that are very protective of their cap table and don't want to give away their equity for a perceived value. So those are, on a very high level, what we do at Plug and Play, the drivers of our business. And I've been with the firm for about 7 years, based in our Silicon Valley headquarters. I moved out of my home country, Iran, about 10 years ago to continue my education, and all things aligned. And when I moved to the Bay Area 7 years ago, I met with our CEO and founder, Saeed Hamidi, who had at the time been running several industry verticals that were successfully growing, and we saw a number of large corporations from the energy industry that were coming to Silicon Valley, trying to find startups to invest in, to partner with, and we wanted to get a little bit more active in the space and put a full-fledged effort behind it, and that was when I was tasked to build the energy and sustainability practice at Plug and Play. Fast forward today, we work with some 25 of the largest energy companies around the world that actively work with us to identify technologies that can address their business challenges, either for investments, as in their corporate venture capital, or for partnerships, whether it's pilot projects, proof of concepts, strategic relationships like acquisitions or licensing deals or commercial agreements, whatever that they need to help reach their carbon neutrality goals and move towards an energy economy that is decentralized, digitized, and decarbonized. So that's in a nutshell what we do. The slides didn't come up, but I think I covered everything I wanted to share, and I hope that I get to learn from you today. And thank you, Ron, again for having me. And I'm excited to also learn and to share a little bit about what we're doing in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and most recently, and also learn from some of you who are here today. Thank you.
I'm going to actually ask Fairmars to go next, because Wade ended on this whole idea of digitization of energy, and that's where Qualcomm is working. So I thought that might be a nice transition.
Hello everyone, my name is Fairmars Mahsoudlu. I'm currently working with Qualcomm, but just telling you a little bit about my path in energy. Almost 40 years ago, I started my career in energy right here in Palo Alto, joining a company called Systems Control, right on Edgewood Road. So at Systems Control, we built the first generation of advanced applications for power system control and monitoring analysis that run in utility control centers. The company was acquired by ABB a few years later, so I stayed with ABB. But over the past couple of decades, I have worked for some of the largest companies in the Valley, Sun Microsystems, Cisco, and now Qualcomm. Sustainability has always been a personal and professional passion. So I have been fortunate that all my jobs afforded me the opportunity to stay close to what I like to do. Now, bringing us closer to digitalization and what we see. So Qualcomm, as you know, we are a silicon company. Billions of chipsets shipped. Nearly every smartphone or tablet has a Qualcomm chipset inside it. So we want to take that technology to utilities. So in my day-to-day role, I work with large utilities globally and their suppliers. And invariably, the utilities, because of regulatory pressure or public opinion, they are shifting their supply portfolio to greener sources like wind and solar, as well as energy storage. But this is interesting because this is not just on the supply side that things are changing. They're also changing on the demand side. We all know about electrification of transportation. Electrification is going to grow in other industries as well. But also for consumers, we are going to increasingly see smart loads that can self-optimize based on price or reliability or other criteria. So we are moving from a centralized grid to a decentralized grid, whereby these resources have to be all coordinated. And for that you need communication, wireless, and we are very happy about it as Qualcomm. But you also need the compute capability at the edge of the grid, as we call it, where the load is. Now, for this audience of investors and entrepreneurs and technology innovators, the good news is that utilities across the board, they are looking for more data and they need tools so that they can analyze this data so they can make the grid more reliable, more resilient, less fragile. So there is an opportunity to bring technology that is going to make the grid more flexible. And that is going to be the perspective I look at when we talk about sustainability. Because at the end of the day, if electricity is going to replace fossil fuel, well, secondarily, it's in everybody's interest that we have a reliable grid, that we optimize it so that the energy is not just clean, but also reliable, but more importantly, also affordable. And that's the role of digitalization. So,
great. Anatoly, this is a perfect, we didn't even plan this, this is like a perfect transition from one to another, because Anatoly is working on a vision for electricity at the very edge of the system. So go ahead, Anatoly.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for coming, everybody. My name is Anatoly. Basically, I want to build a private utility company that will operate the electrical ecosystem, which is better than today. And as we go to the future, it's going to become only better. And I hope the prices are going to go down, and then we can digitize and create new technology. So I'm happy to represent all the startups and companies on this panel today. Today, the government basically has a plan how we can upgrade the electrical infrastructure up to 2050, and we can see what we can build today towards that future that is going to be better. As soon as we start replacing, let's say, diesel generators on islands or as a backup generators with batteries, it's going to be better for everybody. And that's what we are trying to achieve here. And I hope there will be more companies in energy industry, and we need those ideas, startups that can actually improve the grid by using companies like Qualcomm and all other. And I hope there will be many great partnerships with them as well.
Awesome, thank you very much.
What a demo piece.
Yeah, we have a charger here, which we design, manufacture, and we install them. We have a license from California to install them for free, actually. If you have any property in California, we will do installation and hardware for free. You don't need to pay us anything, because California is going to pay. So feel free to ask me anything about charging stations.
Awesome. What a great value for anybody who owns property. So Wade, you have you're working with global corporations and you have facilities all over the world. What have you seen that's changing on both the corporate front and the government front globally over the last 3 to 5 years?
So I've joined Plug and Play 7 years ago, and this is at a time that the venture community was shying away from capital-intensive technologies and clean tech, because about 15 years ago there was clean tech 1.0 entrepreneurs and investors that were combating climate change, and a lot of money was lost and a lot of lessons were learned, and there was a lot of challenges on our way. And I think today, with the continuous advancement of technologies and with the reducing cost of renewables, thanks to the scale that we have today, it has become very apparent that even for those that don't necessarily care about the sustainability benefits, the economy is there. The renewables are cheaper than fossil fuels in many different contexts, and in economy-wide it can be adopted. So a lot has changed. For us, about 3 years ago, when we formed a partnership with the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which is a consortium of about 50 large corporations that had pledged to put an end to plastic waste, and they wanted to tackle the startup ecosystem. They hired us to run a global technology transfer network in 9 locations, including Silicon Valley, Abu Dhabi, Singapore, South Africa, Tokyo, Abu Dhabi, and a few other places. That was for us a critical mass to get very active on the space, and we saw an increasing number of corporations following that trend. And obviously there's never been as much excitement, engagement, and government support in these topics. With the likes of IRA and CHIPS Act, we've seen a tremendous momentum in building hubs and supporting entrepreneurs that are actually creating these new technologies. And it's not just energy sector, because energy, if you look at data, about 2 years ago, the GDP lines and the emissions have crossed, and we're moving towards an economy that is that these 2 lines are decoupled. But then we have about 4 or 5 other sectors, including transportation, the built environment, industrials and manufacturing, food and agriculture, as well as the retail industry, that all have kind of contributing to this movement towards carbon neutrality. And in each and every one of these sectors or clusters, we're seeing an increased momentum in startups that are coming to tackle the challenges, and corporations and governments that are helping them to get to the next phase of the economy.
Great, thanks. I'll switch over to government. Anatoly already told us that the state of California will pay for an EV charger if you want to put it in the property that you own. So, Anatoly, what are you seeing from government other than this one program? Well, you could talk more about this program and other programs that you're seeing from government that's going to drive your business forward.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about batteries and EV charging and also solar, within the last 20 years, government supported solar a lot, and then now you can even get your solar on your roof for free because companies are going to just pay for it, or California is going to pay for it. Then all other states actually are following up. We had many news a couple months ago when states start banning sales of internal combustion engines, and in 2035 you will be able to buy a new vehicle only electric or hybrid. So it's going to help a lot to companies like us to actually build a better infrastructure as well. And when those news came out, so government decided not to only ban sales but also put a good amount of money for the infrastructure like EV charging space and batteries. Batteries are really important, like an energy storage, because you can replace a diesel generator. We can cut the production of oil because we don't need it as much as we needed before. And for, let's say, microgrids, recently news $10 billion for batteries. There are around $15 billion available. So if you start a company today, guess what? There's a grant that you can apply and you can get money from them and you can continue working on your idea. The same with the EV charging space. That's why we can see many companies pumping up in the space to start a EV charging company. And even if you didn't build the charger, you can still get incentives, good for them. But I guess at the end of the day, when you sell to the customer actually wants to have a fully integrated model. They want to work with one company instead of four. That's why what we see today in the EV charging space, whenever you pull up to the charger doesn't work and something breaks, except Tesla once. And that's what we are doing differently. We try to build hardware from zero, we design electrical circuits and software connectivity and installation and maintenance. And I believe that's the model that is going to be better in the future. But if there is new company that pumps up today, I think it's going to be supported by the government in any way in energy. You just need to find the right way how to connect to that incentive. And almost all states, I guess, today already use plans how much money they will put into the EV charging space and the energy storage space. So it's great that we have those news and the government like what we have supports that ecosystem. If you go to other countries, you don't actually have that support. That's why we're growing much faster. Of course, China is number one in electric vehicles today because they don't require the certification to actually install the charger. But I think from the policy perspective, if you are thinking about critical infrastructure of the country, energy, you should have that resilient and secure infrastructure. And not everybody should be able to get those incentives and license to actually operate the grid or electric chargers because it's so easy to break in, and we've seen so many attacks on critical infrastructure, and it will happen more and more in the future. And we need that support from the government and necessary permits to be able to actually operate it. So we need the help with the policymakers and from policymakers and. I think the future is bright, so we want to believe in it, and and I encourage everybody to get into it.
I love listening to Anatoly. It makes it sound so easy to do.
It's a lot of work, honestly.
Oh, just, it's awesome. Thank you so much. Faramars, you're very involved with the electric infrastructure, and how do you see policy playing into digitization and that leading to sustainability?
Yeah, I think this is a great view of the future, and I endorse it. And I like that to happen the way exactly you described it. Now, the role of government for utility and energy systems actually is pretty significant, but there is a catch here. It's policies and regulatory decisions at the state level here, of course, in our country, that dictate the way the energy system is operated. The utilities, as you know, they are monopolies. So PG&E, Southern Cal Edison, any company you name, they have been given a territory that they can unilaterally operate as long as they provide service. So this business model of utilities having a guaranteed rate of return for providing an infrastructure, critical infrastructure service, is good in a way for public because access to electricity is guaranteed. On the other hand, it has cultivated this very conservative culture and approach to innovation. And so if Anatoly wants to go and convince utility X to install the chargers that he has, he's going to go through years of internal evaluation and may or may not see the light of day. Now, that situation is changing because of public pressure, because of regulatory attention being paid to this, but we are still locked in a highly regulated environment, right? So, and how do you expect innovation to break the logjam? So, it's a very delicate balance that we have here. Now the hope for entrepreneurs like him and maybe other folks who are here is to be innovative on the demand side more than on the supply side, because the supply side and operating the transmission grid is truly a highly specialized endeavor. Tens of billions of dollars of infrastructure are backing it. On the other hand, optimizing energy for your building, your residence, your factory, your resort, your hotel, these are things that increasingly regulators are opening up, and utilities are forced to observe. And so things are changing. So microgrid that you mentioned, 10 years ago in California, you would have run into a wall if you proposed microgrids. But today, for example, PG&E is thinking about offering microgrid as a service itself. So signs are good in places where government policy is in line with public interest, and there is a single body that regulates countries. For example, in Saudi Arabia, I've worked with Saudi Electric on multiple projects. It's easy to mandate, rollout of smart meters, or mandating renewable energy, because these are single government entity ruling the entire. Whereas in our country, you have 50 states, 50 regulatory regimes. Every public utility commission is different. Every utility is looking after their own interests because they have literally tens of billions of dollars of assets invested. And so we all hope that this is going to be opened up, because climate change is not going to wait. So we need to put pressure on public officials, on Public Utility Commission. And
you talked about a project that you did in Saudi Arabia. Is there like a discrete project that you could tell us about that contributes to the sustainability, so people can have a concrete example?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we help utilities in what is termed digitalization. But what does that actually mean? So as you look at the way the grid is changing and evolving, with EV chargers and with the smart loads and with rooftop solar and whatnot, the pattern of consumption used to be the utility sends you the electrons and you consume it. Whereas right now, we send back electrons to the grid. And so the grid wasn't designed to handle that, right? The whole safety of the grid, protection of the grid, expected one-way flow of electricity. So what turns out to be the solution to this dilemma is to make the grid more visible, if you like. They need to know, for example, that cylindrical transformer on top of a pole outside your house is not going to blow up because 5 people down the line are charging their Teslas and that thing wasn't designed for it. So one thing we do, there are a couple of things that we're working on to help them with this. One is the smart meters, and I believe in Saudi Arabia they have undertaken that. But the next generation of smart meters are going to be effectively smart devices, like your phone, with applications. They can detect the pattern of consumption, they can forecast it, and utility is going to be able to anticipate when the chargers come online ahead of time, because they have to schedule their supply. The other thing we are working on with utilities is in the US today, in what we call the distribution grid. This is the visible part of the grid, the wires and ports and whatnot. There are 300 million assets, different equipment. Barely 1% of these are actually monitored. So we are building this small sensors that are batteryless. They can operate for 15, 20 years. They have smarts inside them so that they can monitor that equipment and tell the utility if something is going wrong. The other thing we are doing is, utilities, they usually acquire systems and they keep them for 15 years, 10, 15, 20 years. There is very slow refresh in technology. And I really encourage folks here, everybody is in technology, let's talk. Let's see what we can do together, because what we are doing, for example, is helping them with devices. A single device can replace multiple existing single-purpose devices, so you can use software-defined virtualized functions. So one device can do multiple different protection, automation, control functions with the option to refresh the technology. You go from 4G to 5G, next 6G, and the compute capability changes. So all of these things are happening. This is the heyday of technology for utilities. It wasn't the case always. This is really refreshing, and it offers a lot of opportunities as you can hear from the panel. So.
All right, can you take us through the numbers again? How many assets, what percent are currently monitored? I want to think about the market opportunity here.
Yeah, so the grid, actually, if you think of it logically, right, from the point the power is produced in a power plant, it goes through what they call transmission grid. Those are those big towers you see on the side of the highway.
Well, I was trying to get to the numbers. You said
those are small. Those are small relative to
hundreds of millions of devices, or
yes,
exactly. Help me with the scale.
300 million devices in the distribution network in US. Globally, it could be in the range of 2 billion. And I imagine we are.
And only 1% of them are currently monitored.
And these are the kind of sensors that we think will go on top of or attached to everything. Wireless, batteryless, constantly operating, constantly monitoring. So what we do with this is get the data, analyze it, we send it to the cloud, and for those here who work on data analytics or essentially higher level processing of data, this is what's going to feed the system. So there is an ecosystem coming together to address this challenge. And it's a huge challenge. It's a very complex system. That up to now, it basically worked on the physics of the problem, right? But right now, we are tampering with it. We are changing the laws that govern the operation and design of it, and so we need to add the smart. So I really invite everyone to, let's find time afterwards to chat and maybe connect later, see what we can do together.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I thought I would. Eamon has prompted me to open the up to the panel, up to the audience for questions. So, do we have take this one?
Go ahead. Hi. You mentioned that energy is being digitized. Does that mean there are lots of new emerging formats? Are there format wars, or are people agreeing on standards? And I'm wondering which companies are most behind the new formats.
Okay. So the energy itself is not digitalized. It's still electrons moving to the wires. But what is happening is that to control the grid, we used to rely on analog devices. Now we are relying on digital devices. That is what's changing. So it allows us to use existing infrastructure for wireless communication, for example, to now send device data from hundreds and millions of these, right? That is what's changing. The other thing that's changing is that a lot of the technologies that the Valley developed over the past 20, 30 years that found their way in retail, manufacturing, industrial automation, you name it, it's finally coming to energy. And so all of those lessons learned can now be applied to a new industry. That is what's happening.
Jordan, and then, go ahead.
No.
Jason, go ahead.
Go with
Awesome.
Jordan.
Yeah, so there's for quite a long time there's been this thought about microgrids and making the grid smart, and dealing with a lot of these interconnection issues that you've talked about. There's a lot in the news these days about bidirectional chargers, about virtual power plants. Tesla is becoming a power company, right? So there's a lot of changes that are happening that will make it so that we can all take part in the energy economy at some level. It's kind of decentralized, digitized. Is this something that we can expect in the next 10 years, or is this more like a 20 or 30-year process? I'm just wondering, yeah, the prosumer transformation as well as all of these different opportunities.
Anatoly, why don't you take that one? That's your kind of area.
I'll be happy to share a report from Princeton University recently came out. They calculated how much it will cost us to upgrade the electrical infrastructure of the US up to 2050. The number is $2.5 trillion up to 2050. So it's going to take us 30 plus years. So yeah.
Hi everyone, first of all, thank you very much for this important talk. I'm really grateful that we discussed more and more about sustainability in Silicon Valley. And also for the small promotion, next week, Wednesday, we will talk again about sustainability across the globe, indeed within some officials from Indonesia and France. Well, besides that, my question about sustainability is more global. We know that sustainability have 3 pillars, which is actually ecology, economy, and social. And this pillar is not always like compatible between each other. Somehow economy, ecology, we know that the progress of technology can bring so much economical growth, AI, Web3, NFT, you name it, but it's not always doing good for the environment, energy war, etc. So my question is how we can maintain balance finally between technological development and also economical growth without being detrimental for environment. Thank you.
Really glad you brought this up because when we talk about energy and energy sustainability, we picture a Tesla in the garage. That is not going to save the world, right? So just to be clear, because we don't anticipate a car-centric transportation, 2 billion people having their EVs. So these are things that may actually distract us. So the other aspect of sustainability that is not often talked about is social equity, right? So yes, we want the system to be safe, resilient, reliable, clean, but affordable, right? So take an example. I have a rooftop solar, I have a hybrid car, but studies have shown that some of the subsidies that I was paid to do this may have backfired for a greater population of the utility customers who couldn't afford it. So when we are thinking about innovation, right, we need to think about fair distribution of resources, access to clean energy, access to clean water, improved healthcare, because health is directly affected by the fossil fuel that we burn and whatnot. So making it more concrete, so for example, the example of microgrid that Natalie mentioned. Imagine instead of subsidizing rooftop solars 1 resident at a time, what about community solar, right? So we can have a community solar project somewhere nearby that can support 50 or 100 houses, right? In fact, for grid purposes, the larger the size of that generation, the easier it is to actually deliver benefits. So it's very important to align public interest, policy, business interests, and what NGOs are doing, right? And this is very important because it's very easy to just write $50 billion for EV infrastructure. But could some of that go into more equitable investment? These are the things we should be asking.
That's a great answer. I mean, there's so much policy and incentive going, and we hope that the policymakers make policy that helps the most people and the environment. Thank you very much.
We have some questions. Yeah, thank you for your time today. Really inspirational. I'm really curious of one question. Is apart from the policy, technology, how does the supply chain, is it really working, or how, is the supply chain really, supporting your businesses? Because, when it talks about the charging station or the meters, those are done in mass scale. But, after COVID, right, there has been supply chain shortages because of many reasons. Traditionally because of COVID, and now with IRA, they want things to be done in the States, the key critical, elements. However, most of the things, as he mentioned, EV, the best thing is in China. The whole, EVs, charging stations, batteries, lithium, lead, solar panels, turbines, many of them are in China. And I'm curious that, but then Biden, US, China decoupling, and US, EU, they're also having some issues, trying to fight back each other, trying to have their own industries. So I'm very curious, whether the supply chain, these big overarching issues have been, influencing your, your industries, and how do you guys cope with that?
I'd love to hear what's going on with the chips first, and then Anatolia. I'm sure that it's a big rush for everybody for chargers, so go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I can talk just briefly about Qualcomm. I'm not, by the way, speaking on behalf of Qualcomm, it's just my observation. So Qualcomm is a very large company. We are a fabless company, means that even though we sell chips, we don't manufacture chips. So we have factories, test facilities that are run by third parties all over the world. China, Taiwan, Mexico, Europe. So I don't know if you know, I'm sure you know about GHG emissions, scope 1, 2, 3 measurements, and companies are held to so that they can show progress in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and bring it down to zero eventually. So Qualcomm, as an example of a typical large corporation, they have now, they have for a number of years, started measuring their direct emissions from those who they buy energy from. But to your point, energy that indirectly causes pollution along the value chain. So a factory in country X that is not responsible environmentally and waste management or energy use, eventually is going to be counted towards Qualcomm's responsibility to take care of it. Now with the decoupling that's happening right now, I'm not sure how enforceable that's going to be, especially if decoupling goes to the extent that it might. But at least the current understanding and the regime, the way it has been dictated to corporations and they are responding to it, is that you shall measure and report your scope 1, 2, 3, and you should have a target for getting it down to zero. So for Qualcomm, for example, we have some numbers, scope 1 reduction, and scope 2 reduction, 30% compared to year 2040. Scope 1 and 2 reduction by 50% by 2030 compared to year 2020. And then all of them coming to zero by year 2040. So if there are companies out there that can do reliable carbon emissions measurement, certify it, those are the kind of things that can hold corporations accountable. And those are very important.
Anatoly, do you have anything to add on the supply chain and COVID?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of thoughts actually with China, Mexico, U.S., with our current president, the next president. If you think about what's going to happen next when the new president is going to come in, how those relationships are going to look like with China, right? And then there's this chips war, right? You have to always think about what's going to happen in the future, because when you start a company, for example, you're like almost 4 years old today. 2 years from now or 3 years from now, it's not that far, and you have to think where things are going to be manufactured. But we can see right now that there are many companies from China going to Mexico actually to open up their factories there, and Tesla recently announced their factory in Monterrey as well. And that's, I believe, based on all the knowledge that I have and I see from all the Chinese companies and American companies and new laws that allows you to get incentives from the government if you manufacture things within the U.S. borders. But Mexico is super close and it's not super expensive compared to U.S., but at the same time it's closer than China. At the same time, it's hard to believe that the recession is going to happen again in the next 2 years, because we can see those cycles, right? So I don't think we will have many of those delivery issues and delays with China. But China manufactures so many things, and I think in short term, of course, you can think what you can do with Chinese companies and partnerships with them. I think it's great, but you should encourage them to open up their offices in Monterrey somewhere or in Mexico, so that you can run your business in a much greater scale, because relationships with Mexico are much better in the U.S. than with China. And we don't know what's going to happen once new president comes in, right? For me, I want to do that in Mexico eventually as well. But if calculations are going to be right, I would love to do that in the US, because we're an American company, we want to be here, and there's this American dynamics direction right now that is growing within the US. And then manufacturing in the US right now is growing, and we need to support that. I think short term, yes, you can use that opportunity and you won't have those issues maybe in the next couple of months, couple of years, but in the long term, think within the borders of your country where you are and where the future is going to be.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the Multiverse and Lamarca, and to Nikki, and thank you to the panelists, and we look forward to talking.